On Washington Unplugged, the GOP's teenage rising star, columnist Christopher Hitchens, and our roundtable looks at the politics of education.
Well, the Republican Party may not have an identifiable leader right now, but it certainly has one waiting in the wings. Jonathan Crone. He is 14 years old. He's been 14 about 10 days now since his birthday. He is joining us from Atlanta, and Jonathan was one of the featured speakers at the recent CPAC convention. Grown-up conservatives from all around the country had gathered there. He got a standing ovation. Jonathan, how did you wind up at the CPAC convention? I know you just wrote a book recently. How did you get to CPAC?
Well, that's an interesting story. You know, the whole thing is that I had heard about CPAC because I get newsletters from different conservative groups, different conservative media groups, different conservative newsletters. And one of them had an advertisement for CPAC, and I had forgotten entirely about that. So I called the ACU, the American Conservative Union, and talked to the assistant director of CPAC. And I had shared with him my book, talked to him about my website. And what's so funny is that after that, he told me that they didn't have anything for me. And then a couple of hours later, I get home and I noticed there was an email in my inbox. And it was from the director of CPAC, the assistant director, excuse me. And he had sent me an email saying they have something for me and they'd love me to do something. And that ended up being able to speak at CPAC. And I also was able to do a book signing, and I was also able to do the Pledge of Allegiance and sit at the head table at the presidential banquet that Thursday night.
The amazing thing is you say you wrote this book because you thought people had forgotten what a conservative really is. What is a conservative?
Well, I believe I believe that a conservative is based upon, has the belief system based on four basic principles: respect for the Constitution, respect for life, less government, personal responsibility. Those are the four basic principles of conservatism. I believe that conservatives must have a clear view of their principles, not redefine it, but a clear definition of their principles based upon what the conservative movement has been since its founding. And I think that was key to what I did. And I think that's why I wrote this book. And I think that is really what the book's about and why conservatives need to have that definition.
It's hard for me to believe you had just turned 14 years old. How did you get interested in politics anyway? Where does all this come from?
Well, that too is an interesting story. I actually got involved in politics when I was 9 years old because of the Democrat filibuster in the United States Senate on judicial nominees. And I just started listening to talk radio, hearing what talk show hosts had to say, learning what they had to say, learning about different areas of politics, and being able to branch out and understand what a conservative was, understand what a liberal was, understand what a elitist was, understand different political terms that I'd never had understood before, and I was able to understand after I started getting involved in politics.
So you wrote a book. Now, how did you get this book published? I understand you used some of your own money on this.
Well, I self-published the first edition of this book. It's not in stores yet, and I self-published this book, and we're actually in a second printing. And we self-published this book. We got out there, and I took my own money, took all the money in my bank account, used it for expenses and for paying for this book. And I spent all my own money, not a dime from my parents, on publishing this book. It's a self-published book, self-printed, and not self-printed. We went to a professional printer, excuse me.
Yeah.
But it was all out of my pocket and not a dime out of my parents. I had earned the money over the past years, and I was able to pay for it.
Well, how did you earn the money? After-school jobs or what?
That's actually a very good question, too. I started earning money I'd done some odd jobs for my dad, and he had paid me for that, but I really started earning good money, especially I did some commercials because I used to be an actor. I got paid for that. For about 1 or 2 years, I can't remember how long, I was the head writer for an internet radio show called The Life Connection Show that goes overseas to kids who don't get Bibles. It's a Christian show. And I got paid for that about a good deal of money every month for each radio show that I wrote. And that allowed me also to pay for this book.
So what is it like now? Here you are, as I say, you just turned 14. You have network anchors calling you for interviews. You're on cable shows. You're on Fox all the time. I mean, you've become the man of the hour. What has that changed your life?
It has in many different ways. It's changed. It's changed the things that I do. It's changed. From now on, I'm going to be known as a political analyst and not just a kid. It's changed It's changed the way that I do different stuff, and it's given me a new opportunities in life that I never thought I would have had. And it has changed my life in many ways. But I remember that if I get a big head about that, then everything's going to be a whole lot worse than it ever has been, and I can, and it'll really harm me in the long run.
So, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Well, I would like to be I'd like to continue doing what I'm doing, going on different shows, being a political analyst, but I'd also like my own talk show.
You're okay with where things are right now, though?
I am. I'm very happy with what I'm doing now.
Well, Jonathan, we want to wish you the very best of luck, and get out there and sell that book. You know, you've got to get out there and hold those autograph sessions and talk to people about it. I've done a little of that myself, and you'll meet a lot of people along the way. I think you'll have a lot of fun doing that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I will.
Okay. So President Obama made a big speech on education this week. Here to talk about it, Russ Whitehurst, who is the Chief of Education Policy at Brookings. Before that, he was at the Department of Education. And Jonathan Martin of Politico. Russ, first, controversial speech, really, when you stop and think about what the president said. He came out for, of all things, merit pay, which a lot of people are for, but most of the teachers' unions are against.
That's right. I think the National Education Association must have lost a little sleep over that speech, so the response has been muted so far. He also strongly endorsed charter schools, which are radical in a way as well. So he hit a lot of issues that I think are interesting and important. Certainly good to have a president using the bully pulpit to advance education if you're interested in education reform.
What can the president really do? Because most education is at the local level, is funded by local taxes and so forth.
The president and Secretary of Education have a tremendous amount of money to dole out under the stimulus bill, and portions of that are at the Secretary of Education's discretion. So he can use that lever to move education forward if he wishes to, if he does
Jonathan, what about the politics of all this?
Well, I was really struck by some of his rhetoric, Bob. The fact is this is a Democratic president up there giving his first education speech and talking about not standing for failing teachers being in schools. The teachers' unions provide key foot soldiers and money to Democratic candidates up and down the ballot. I think in 2004, 1 of every 10 delegates to the Democratic convention was a member of a teachers' union. So it was striking. But there was some good groundwork laid by the White House. My reporting turned up that the AFT and the NEA had both gotten phone calls from the White House in advance, giving them a heads up as to, hey, this is coming, this is what he's going to say. So they kind of knew what was going to happen, but his language was far more confrontational on the issue than it was during the course of the campaign, where he was always more muted as far as talking about teachers.
Were you surprised, Russ?
I was surprised, particularly by the rhetoric. You may remember that he was booed at the NEA convention when he mentioned merit pay. And yet there was really no equivocation on that issue in his speech this week.
Why would teachers be against merit pay?
Well, it's an interesting question because in the rest of the world, merit pay is part of the way people do their work and get compensated. I think the system is ripe for change. I think younger teachers are interested in merit pay. I think the whole compensation system has to be changed if we want the best and brightest to come into teaching, and that's certainly what we want.
But is the reason they're against it is because it's a union and they want everybody treated equally? Is that what it is?
I think that's part of it. The principal position is that merit pay would be destructive of cooperation in schools. And there's something that needs to be a concern there. On the other hand, it's possible to structure merit pay so that schools and teams within schools are subject to merit pay so that you can reward cooperation as well as individual effort.
How important is support of teachers to a politician, to a president?
Well, for a Democrat politician, Bob, it's very important to have those folks on his side. They provide some real help come campaigns. But we should also recognize the fact that President Obama right now has an enormous amount of goodwill throughout the country, but especially with his own party. And the folks at the NEA, at the AFT are politically savvy, Bob, and they get the fact that perhaps this president said some things that they didn't really like, but it doesn't do them any good in the short term or long run to strike back, and it's better for them to sort of take their medicine for now and work with him behind the scenes. Why start a sort of public conflagration when they can just work with this president behind the scenes? And so I think that's why they were so muted in their response to an issue that they really aren't terribly fond of.
Russ, the state of American education right now, as I understand it, from pre-K through 12, we run behind most of the developed countries of the world in math and science.
Well, we're middling. We are a very high-cost provider of mediocre outcomes, is the way to overall summarize what we're dealing with.
So you think that the president was on the right track in this speech?
Oh, absolutely. We need to be better than we are, particularly in a world economy that's knowledge-based.
All right. I want to thank both of you. This is Washington Unplugged. Well, you can say one thing. We always cast a wide net for news here at Washington Unplugged, and one thing that has gone somewhat unreported over the past weeks is the visit that the British Prime Minister Gordon Brown made to this country and to see Barack Obama. And here to talk about this with us is Christopher Hitchens, the writer for Vanity Fair magazine, also the author. Christopher, this got almost no play in the United States, but a lot of play in the British press. Some of the British worried that some way or the other that Obama snubbed the British Prime Minister. What's going on here?
The fact that it got no play here and a lot of play there is exactly the same as the old joke, which is also a truth. Only the British call it the special relationship. No Americans ever do. But the British feel it's special. So if there's ever anything unspecial about it, they get terribly upset. So Gordon Brown got a joint session of Congress to speak to. That's not bad for a Prime Minister. He got FaceTime with the President. That's not bad. He was the first guest. That's not bad. But they think that the President didn't give him a big enough present.
Well, he gave him what?
A pile of DVDs of American classics that probably was from the White House gift shop, I will admit, okay. And I'm as eager to assert Anglophone pride as anyone else, but it's not really enough to get people feeling that they've been dissed, I don't think.
One of the things I think that the British press at least seemed upset about was there was no news conference in the Rose Garden. As I recall, it was pretty cold that day, and they moved it into the Oval Office.
Yes, and I think one could say the president was pretty busy too, and had been rather preoccupied during the course of that week. If there's a significance to this story, I would say it's this. There is evidence that Obama was very tired that week, and maybe a bit exhausted, and maybe a bit anxious. I mean, that may be of interest beyond the Brit audience. If we take it out of the Brit sphere, let's think, does it show that the president is under more stress than he's willing to reveal? Possibly it does. There's a minor thing too, a symbolic thing. The White House, the Oval Office, has given back the Churchill statue that Bush put, the Churchill bust, I should say. It was a gift from the embassy. People are reading too much significance into that, I believe. I think the president has the right to furnish his own Oval Office.
So you do not see this as something really serious, some kind of a breach between the United States and Great Britain?
No, I don't, but I think it's a sign of extreme self-love and self-pity in the British press, which is an old story.
An old story. So what else are you working on these days?
Well, if you read Vanity Fair, which I hope you do, I've been in Lebanon writing about the amazing resistance of Lebanese people to Syrian domination of their country. The various words, Arab Street, Hezbollah, so that we're used to hearing all the time, saying actually the Arab Street doesn't run one way. I've been trying to write about that.
You actually ran into
a
little trouble yourself there, didn't you?
I got roughed up on the Arab Street, yes, but I also got saved by some nice people on the Arab Street who stopped me being roughed up. So that's why I say the street isn't one way.
What do you think about what the administration, the overtures they've made so far? Hillary Clinton has been, of course, to Israel. How's that coming along?
Not very well, I don't believe. I don't think it has any better chance than Condoleezza Rice's view that, in a way, the problems of the region are to do with misunderstandings. If only people were nicer to each other or nicer about each other, things would be. These disagreements do not arise from misunderstandings. They arise from direct conflicts of interest.
So what can the United States do in a constructive way here as you see it right now?
That's a great question. That's a great question to end with.
People have been
we should have probably started with
30,
that,
50
but
years.
I think we have to decide what is the main problem. And in my opinion, the main problem is this. Will we let Iran become a nuclear power, or will we not? Will we say, all right, you won. You win, you won. Sorry, I split that difference. Or will we say, as we have said up till now, under no circumstances? Will that be allowed to happen because it's the end of international law, it's the end of UN resolutions, it's the end of every treaty we've ever signed? That decision will show us what we think about all the other ones.
Christopher, what do you think would happen if we looked the other way and Israel took care of this problem with a bomb?
The Israelis asked George Bush for permission to attack Iran during the transition period. We know this to be true, and they were told no. They must know by now they're not going to get a better offer from Obama.
Before you go, I want to ask you about the story you wrote about waterboarding, and you really went the extra mile for a reporter. You allowed yourself to be waterboarded by our people who teach the CIA how to survive this kind of treatment. What was that like?
By the way, you say we teach them to survive it, but that had better be true. What we hope they're not doing is teaching them to inflict it. My discovery was this, I suppose, if I have only a word to put it in. You've read this, it simulates the feeling of drowning. It doesn't simulate the feeling of drowning. You are being drowned, except slowly. It's not a simulation. So, if you hope to win over anyone who's in your custody, if you hope to retrain them, make them think differently, which we have the hope of doing, don't do that to them. Don't be doing that.
You knew that at any point in this that you could call it off.
Yes.
And of course, somebody who's being waterboarded doesn't have that option.
Well, unless they say, I'll say whatever you like.
Yeah.
They can stop it then.
Yeah.
Which is, in a way, the point to begin with.
Did you kind of feel like you were going to die? I mean, it must be just a horrible thing to undergo.
If you feel you're being drowned or asphyxiated, your mind stops working altogether. You only have one instinctive reaction. I'll do what it takes to stop this. It has to stop now. You can't put up with it. Mm-hmm. I was able to take it on one more try because I thought I hadn't lasted long enough the first time. I felt a bit embarrassed. But the reaction is the same. The gag reflex is the same. You know, we have these things for a reason. They're to stop us from dying.
So there's no question in your mind that this is torture. When Vice President Cheney would say we don't torture,
he must be meaning we don't waterboard. He better be meaning that.
Because if we do,
we are.
Christopher Hitchens, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.